Hello,
Hello.
it's me, and it's him,
And it's me.
and there's somebody missing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got no Danielle Elvis because she is stuck in traffic at the moment. She had a dental emergency and she had to go to the dentist, which is like about 2 hours away, which is that's devotion for you to get a decent dentist. And she's stuck in traffic, about 46 minutes away, I think, at the moment. So you're stuck with us. Yeah, and apologies for last week. If you read on Facebook, you obviously know that we unexpectedly lost one of our little fur children, and it was all very depressing.
Unfortunately, it's a regular occurrence at the moment. These sort of things happen, and that's either that or
yeah, so that happened, and then I had a trapped nerve in my spine, which just made it perfect week. So I feel just about as good as I look at the moment, which is a bit shit. Yeah. Now this week's case, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's terrible, absolutely one of the worst ones, and it's known about it for a while, and it's one of the ones that stick with you. And I can probably tell you without the script because I remember every detail because it's that horrific. But beneath, when you peel back the layers, beneath the horrific part, it's also there's hope in there, and it's like an epic battle, honestly,
between good and evil. That's how I felt.
It's just like everything was coming together on this day when this happened. There was the forces of evil going against her, and the forces of good working for her. Yeah. And it was a fucking battle. And you'll see that as we get into the case.
Actually, quite a lot of the case will probably sound a bit familiar to you, even if you had this case that does mirror slightly to a case that we did not long ago.
I think it was about episode 10-ish. Can't remember. Yeah. But we'll get to that as well. So, shall we just get into it, shall we? Yeah. So it's just the two of us, and I think I'm doing all the reading because there's weird words that nobody can say. Well, I can't say them. So
I actually know the story quite well, but obviously it's best to have all the information there, and I ain't actually got that. I can't get the PowerPoint on my computer at the moment because
excuses. Yeah, I think you can, but there's words. I can't say them, so don't have any expectations. This case is based out of South Africa, and let's get into it. So, as I said, I have told you before, I've always had an interest in true crimes and anything mystery, and I've heard the most horrific stories from all over the world, and we've covered some of them. There's some that I've not covered and we will get to in future, like the Greyhound bus killing and things. There's horrific things going on in this world, and every single one of them.
Okay, yeah.
Straight away. Dog needs a drink.
Go sit down.
Yeah, I'm trying to be serious and talk about quite a devastating case, and there's a dog. Anyway, cases for all over the world, and there's some truly evil people that do some evil things in this world, and they stick with you. And this one is most definitely one of those cases. And as you can see for the title, it's about Alison Botha. I don't know if you've heard of Alison Botha. You probably heard the other case because you watched it with us. There is a lot of parallels. What happened to her is absolutely horrific, and the details are both disturbing and heartbreaking. However, as I alluded to at the beginning, within our story, amidst all the evil and the darkness, there is light. And what happened to this beautiful young woman in December of 1994, so almost 30 years ago, was a battle of good versus evil. It's a tale of courage, it's a tale of survival, it's a tale of strength, and it's a miracle. It's more than one miracle, actually, and you see that as we go through. This is Alison's story. It's not about the perpetrators, because there's two in this case. This is Alison's story, and I really want to cover this on this channel, and I had planned to do so at a later date. But due to some recent developments, which we will get into as well, it made it really relevant to cover it right now. So, whether you've heard of her or not, It's not an easy story to tell. It's going to be quite difficult to tell you, and it's not an easy story to hear. But it needs to be told, and it deserves to be told.
Especially with the updated information,
Yeah.
you'll see why it's ridiculous.
And yeah, the dog is trying to take Danielle's place, but he's not a Michigan mood ring, so he's not very good.
So he's not allowed.
No. So before we introduce you to Alison and get into the absolutely gruesome events that occurred that December morning almost 30 years ago, we need to, I don't want to, because it shouldn't be about them, but we need to tell you a little bit on the background of the two evil sons of a bitches who were responsible for the horrific events and the horrific crime that was carried out on that morning. This is not their story. It's not about them. And we're not going to spend too much time on these two pieces of shit. But there are a few relevant details that we need to address in regards to their history to make it all sort of tie in together so you can understand what goes on to happen.
I have a feeling Lisa's going to swear quite a
Oh, I'm
bit.
going to swear quite a lot. So just, I'm going to swear. And I'm not even sorry. So we're going to go over these as quickly as fucking possible because they're not even worth talking about that long. And then we're going to tell you Alison's story. So first up, we have this motherfucker. He's called Frans de Toit. And yeah, he even looks like an evil twat, in my opinion, to come from me. And that's enough of him, so let's get rid of him. Right, that's just one of the two. So Frans de Toit was born in 1968 in South Africa. He was raised, believe it or not, by a Christian family. And his father was actually a police officer, which might or might not be relevant. And it's stated many, many times when you look at this case that he was raised with Christian values. But as we'll discover, clearly this man was no Christian, and it's actually an insult to anybody that's even remotely any religion to say that he's got any religious values. His childhood was largely unremarkable. It was normal. One might say that it was just boring. There was nothing significant happened. Now, a lot of these cases you hear that there was like things that happened in their childhood and perpetrated it, and it's never an excuse because lots of people have got shitty childhoods and they go on to be normal, functional members of society that don't do horrific, evil things. Yeah. So it's not an excuse, but I mean, he didn't have any excuse, even though some people try to use it as an excuse. So there's nothing to try and explain away the monster that he became, or maybe he always was. I mean, you've got the whole nature versus nurture thing. But we do find in a lot of these cases that they try and explain it away by this happened to him when he was a child.
Yeah.
Nothing happened to him.
You've got to consider most of that comes from them, so it's their own perspective of things. And you know they've got a skewed perspective when you hear what the sort of things they say and do.
Yeah, but there's nothing, absolutely nothing. Yeah. There were signs though, even though he had a normal childhood, there was no trauma, there was no abuse, nothing. There were signs in his childhood that he had some serious problems. When he was in what they refer to in South Africa as Standard 8, which according to my research is equivalent to, if you're in America, the 8th grade, or if you're in the UK, it's year 8, or maybe, I don't know if they still do first year, you go to primary 7 and then first year. Maybe, I don't know if they do that in Wales or whatever. Anyway, he's in his 8th year of education.
So fairly young.
So he's aged 12 to 13 at this point. Yeah. And at this stage, he set fire to a school dormitory, which is not typical behaviour for a 12 to 13-year-old to go around like a fucking little pyromaniac setting fire to the school. That's just, I mean, you do get little, I mean, I have worked in education, you do get children that are a bit of a little twats, but they don't generally go around setting fire to buildings. His reasoning for doing this, he claims, that it's because he listened to heavy metal music at the time and the lyrics made him do it via hidden messages.
Bullshit. Well, that's total bullshit. Because there's, again,
and there is some quite dodgy lyrics
there is,
in some of these heavy metal music.
and some of the
But
arts as well.
There is millions of children all over the world listen to that music and not went and set fire to their fucking school. So a bit of bullshit there, in my opinion. Don't come from me. So obviously, after this incident, he was expelled for school. We can blame them, obviously. And his parents then moved almost 100 miles away to a new town. And
but without him?
Unfortunately, they probably wished that they could have went without him, but they took him. So they moved probably to escape the sort of stigma surrounding the fact that they had a demented little shit for a child. They've moved 100 miles away, and obviously he's a police officer as well.
It's got to be embarrassing for him.
It's embarrassing. He's probably mortified that his son is a little pyromaniac. Now, it's around this time, at the age of 13, that Frans, we're just going to call him Frans, entered his first sexual relationship after meeting a girl, wait for it, who claimed to be a satanic witch.
How old was this?
13. So he's met a satanic witch, who's also about the same age, but she's a satanic witch. Because that's fucking normal, isn't it? And at this point, he becomes a Satanist himself.
No, he might as well, mightn't he?
As you do.
As he started off.
And with his new girlfriend, the witch, they performed a whole host of bizarre and weird satanic rituals together. Because that's perfectly fucking normal, isn't it? Anyway, he claimed at this time, while he was doing this, while he was with his little witchy girlfriend, that he became possessed by multiple demons. I would argue that he was already a little bit of a demonic little shit prior, and he's going around setting fire to schools and shit. But he claims that when he's doing these little rituals and little ceremonies and stuff,
I bet he didn't claim
his witch girlfriend.
Did he claim that at the time, or is it more later years where he's got to try and cover his tracks and make up excuses? And that wasn't me. It was this demon and that devil. And
just wait till you find out which demons they are later. Yeah. So he was described by his peers, that obviously people went to school with him at the time, as lazy. He's just lazy. And he had to actually repeat Standard 7, which is Year 9 or 9th grade, all over again and do it twice, not because he was stupid, although he probably is a bit fucking stupid, really, that he's got a little witchy girlfriend and he's setting fire to things, but apparently he had some degree of intelligence. It was just because he was a lazy little shit and he didn't do any work, so he had to do it again. Basically, he's a lazy little psychopath. His parents, obviously, they're frustrated at this point that they've got this little twat for a child that's burning down schools and claiming he's a Satanist. Decided to send him off to the army. Sort him out.
Yeah.
Probably what I'd read, to be honest. But let's just pack him off to the army and get some discipline into his life, and maybe that'll sort him out, because I've got a fucking clue what to do with him, to be honest. I mean, look at the state of him. Yeah. So they pack him off to the army, hoping it'll straighten him out. As you could probably guess, the fact that I'm doing a crime episode in which he's one of the perpetrators, it didn't work. It didn't sort him out. He spent his entire time, which was only a couple of months, to be honest, in the detention barracks before he was dishonourably discharged. So clearly right there, he's got issues with authority. He doesn't like being told what to do, and he feels like he's got to be in control.
Well, I'm glad he was discharged early. I mean, can you imagine him with a gun at that age and that perspective and that sort of weird crap he's doing and that? He doesn't need a weapon.
Oh, it gets worse.
But then, unfortunately, he do. But,
it's much, much worse. So, dishonourably discharged for the army after a couple of months in the detention barracks, which, what was the fucking point? His parents still trying to help him out, still hoping that he's going to change and there's going to be a big epiphany, and there's not. Just spoiler alert. They get him a job in a mine, and he moved to a place called Wellcorn, and I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but that's how I pronounce it. It's Wellcorn. And it was here that he got married. Yes.
Not to the witch.
Not to the witch, no. No, he didn't get married to the witch. He got married and he actually fathered a child. He had a daughter. However, this marriage didn't last long because according to Frans, fucking heartthrob Frans, his wife did not satisfy him sexually. Whether that was because she wasn't a satanic witch, I've no idea, that's just speculation, but she didn't satisfy him sexually. So he left.
There's a bit of an ego with him then.
Yeah, he left. And after leaving his wife, he would have zero contact with his daughter. Which normally you think, that's really sad. What a shame for that poor child. She's not got a father figure. But in this case, it's the best thing that could happen because as you might be getting an inclination so far, and you're definitely going to find out later, having this evil motherfucker anywhere near a child as any sort of role model should not be a thing. So after this, he moved to a place called Port Elizabeth, where his parents, yet again, they're not giving up. Bless them, they're not giving up. They're still hoping that this little demonic evil wanker that they've been lumbered with is going to have a turnaround. They helped him again to get a job. This time they got him a job as a driver for a Chinese stationery shops. But he was subsequently fired. Would you like to guess why he was fired, Jamie?
Oh, I couldn't guess. Was he making sort of satanic symbols and that out of the equipment? Or
no, he wasn't. But that was a good guess. He stole money. He stole money off his employer, and he was.
Because he can't just work for the money now.
No,
just wants it given to him. I suppose.
Give me everything for nothing. Like I'm not getting it. Lazy. Even the kids at school thought he was lazy. So he got a suspended sentence for stealing this money of 3 years. In 1993, we get to 1993, and he got married again. I'm just going to put him on the screen again, just for. I said we weren't going to look at him anymore, but we need to. Mm-hmm. 2 people married up. What the fuck? There's no accounting for taste, that's all I'm going to say. So he gets married again in 1993, and he's clearly he's a psychopath. So it's not like his personality is going for him.
No.
But somebody else married him, and yeah. This marriage resulted in a son, by the way, so he's now got another child.
Oh, dear.
After failing in his previous employment, because he stole money, because he's a lazy, good-for-nothing, evil motherfucker, he thought it would be an excellent idea, and I had to look this up, to open a she-bean.
What's wrong with them then?
I had no idea.
No.
I thought she-bean? Is that like a she-wee? But it's not. It's nothing to do with a she-wee. You don't know what a she-wee is. It's something that you have a wee in, basically. A she-bean, nothing to do with she-wees, is basically a place where you sell alcohol illegally. That's a South African thing. She-bean.
I thought it was like a coffee shop when you first said it.
Well, kind of, but it's not coffee, it's alcohol.
Alcohol.
Yeah, so he's basically breaking the law. It's just laziness again, isn't it? So, and it was through this she-bean, which I didn't know was a thing, that he met the other perpetrator in today's case. The other evil motherfucker. And I've got a picture of him and all. And if you thought that one was amazing looking, you've not seen nothing yet. Because this is Theuns, even though it's spelled Theuns, it's Theuns. Is it Theuns? Theuns. Theuns Kruger. No relation to Freddy, although maybe he is.
Maybe he is, yeah. Maybe
this
he
is
is.
Theuns. And let's get to him. Slightly different story, but there is parallels. It's the same in his background. So this one, this twat, was born in 1975. His biological father apparently left his mother shortly after she became pregnant. Maybe he knew. Maybe he sensed something.
Psychic ability.
But then again, apparently he himself ended up in prison, so maybe the apple didn't fall that far for the tree. And I couldn't find out why he ended up in prison, just that he ended up in prison. So after like that, he buggered off, and he actually never met his father. He had no contact with his real father because he buggered off before he was born. Whilst she was pregnant, however, the mother really moved quite quickly here. She met and married somebody while she was pregnant. So she's been with somebody who has left her while she's pregnant. I mean, there's only 9 months here. And she's met somebody else, and she's suddenly married him. Had somebody else's baby. Her husband, her new husband, only stayed with her long enough to give little Theuns his name, and then he buggered off and all.
Wow. Well, that's a bit more of a sort of, should we say,
a little bit more dysfunction going on here than what went on with our one. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So he's buggered off. Not long after this, and there's nowhere where it actually says how long, but apparently not long. So while he was still quite young, and like toddler ages maximum, she got married again. So she's not hanging about, is she? And they moved somewhere.
Can you guess where?
Well, you can try and guess where, but I'm trying not to say it.
No.
They moved to Tsitsikama.
What?
Yeah, Tsitsikama. Tsitsikama. Tsitsikama.
Wow.
That's where they moved.
That's
apparently, it's a breathtaking stretch of forest next to the southeastern coast of South Africa. Tsitsikama.
Breathtaking to pronounce it.
Yeah. And that's probably not anywhere near like what you're supposed to say it, but that's the best I could do.
That's what it's called tonight.
So, he would later claim, Theuns, after all this has happened, that his stepfather, like the second husband to the mother, abused him during his childhood. However, the validity of this claim remains completely unclear. The stepfather himself has come out and he's vehemently denied those claims, and he's actually threatened to sue Theuns and anybody else that claims that is a fact or ever even remotely happened for defamation, because he's like raging. He was raging about this. Obviously, if Theuns was abused as a child, then that's absolutely tragic and unacceptable. But quite frankly, the source of this claim isn't exactly reliable. In my opinion, don't come from me. And many violent predators have in the past claimed that they themselves were victims in order to somehow justify what they then went on to do. Well, it happened to me, so you know.
But you know that
even if
it did happen, they
so some of them it did happen to, but some of them just made it the shit up.
Or screwed perspective.
Yeah.
They think they were being hard done by, and that's like what was happening to everyone. You know,
so some of them have been found to have made it up, and it didn't happen, and it wasn't true, and it was just bullshit. So, did he? Who knows? We can't trust the source. The person he's accusing vehemently denies it, and he's willing to go as far as to sue people and take them all the way through court because he's that adamant that he didn't do anything to him. However, that aside, during his childhood, he was bullied at school. He was called Dry Titty. That's South African, and you're going to learn something today. It
sounds like dry titty.
You're going to learn something today. Dry Titty is so. That might not be how you say it at all, but that's how
Dry Titty.
It's South African, and it means 3 tits because he had a third nipple. So if you know anybody that's got a third nipple, dry titty. Anyway, I prefer the term triple nipple, but whatever. Anyway, how the kids knew he had 3 nipples, I've got no idea.
Gym class.
You don't run about naked in gym class, though, do you? Anyway, and he claims that he contemplated suicide over this on at least one occasion. So, because of this, apparently, this is all according to him. This is what he says after. This is what they all come out and say afterwards, which I'm never
Convenient.
convinced, boy. So he started dabbling in drugs and alcohol, and he became involved in his first relationship.
All right.
Wait for it. With a satanic witch.
What?
Who seduced him into Satanism. Seriously though, how many satanic witches are floating about in South Africa? What the fuck? I mean, is there just like a load of them, or is it the same one that's just going around targeting little weirdos? What?
Or is he trying to emulate his pal? Is this the latest story to try and keep up with his little pal?
And what?
Because
what is it? Is there like just loads of them, or is
maybe?
Or is it just one that's like singling out little weirdos?
Maybe it is the same one. Yeah.
So yeah, he's got a little witch as well. So I have no idea what's going on in South Africa, but it's weird. Anyway,
Weird and witchy.
Apart from his satanic witch girlfriend that he had, he began to develop a hatred, and he was fucking angry about it. He really hated women. Why? Why did he hate women? Because they wouldn't sleep with him. Yeah, little hints of incel there. If you don't know what an incel is, basically it's a fucking twat who thinks that everybody should want to sleep.
They can sit at home and
everybody should want to sleep with them because
yeah, they don't do nothing.
The God's
for
gift.
it. They sit at home.
They expect women to like be just like
alone.
throwing themselves at them, and if they don't, then women are wankers.
Yeah, they don't do nothing at all to go and make it happen. Should we say?
Blaming women for their own inadequacy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what an incel is. These people feel that they're entitled to sleep with women, and women should willingly sleep with them.
Knock at their door.
Despite the fact that they're massive weirdos who make no effort to form relationships with women, or anybody for that matter.
No.
Basically, they're self-entitled little shits who think they should get whatever they want with zero effort. I think we all know a couple of them. Maybe they're not like to the extent of being incels, but yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them do isolate themselves from the public, and then they complain. Well, of course they're not socialised, and that's not gonna. They're losing all their chances, Or, well, whatever.
So they basically, he thinks that women. He hates them because they won't sleep with them. He's doing nothing to.
But he got a witch.
He got a witch.
Yeah, well, I still say that's a
bonus. But it does nothing to pursue healthy, normal relationships with non-witches because he's too filled with hate and rage and self-entitlement to do anything like that. So it's not his fault; it's women's fault. So he that's growing in him as he gets older. Women aren't sleeping with him. Witches sleeping with him. Satanic witch, fine.
And they did not
normal women. Want nothing to do with them, and can you blame them?
The witch is not classed as feminine. Well, there you go.
There you go. So people who knew Theuns often referred to him when they were like talking about him, like with each other. You've probably all done this. You probably had somebody and you give them a weird nickname. I know. Jamie's dad's done it because. Jamie thought that some of these people, that was their actual names, but I better not say it in case I watch them.
No.
Anyway. Yeah, and you know what I'm talking about, Bob. Yeah, so they referred to him when they were talking amongst each other under the names Damien, and we all know Damien for the Omen movie, 3 sixes on the back of the head, or Chucky. Basically, they were referring to him as either a murderous fucking doll or the son of the actual devil, which kind of gives you a massive insight into the personality of this man thing and the vibe that he was putting out, that people would refer to him as either Damien or Chucky. Mm-hmm. And people that knew him described him as having absolutely no feelings for anyone and being completely emotionless. Apart from the witch. He had feelings for the witch. Satanic witch. So his mother, now take this with a pinch of salt and you find out why. His mother later stated, after all this shit went on, which we're going to get to later, that little Theuns had a happy childhood and they had lots and lots of fun. But contrary to that, for a few years prior to what he ended up doing, she had absolutely no contact with him whatsoever.
That's probably why it was
So
fun.
how much fun were they actually fucking having?
Well, she was probably having fun, because if she weren't having no contact.
And when it happened, he was 19. So it'd been a few years. So, like, at least 3 or 4 years. So he was 15 or 16. She had no contact with him, which is weird.
I wonder why.
But he had a happy life, and they had lots of fun.
Flying around the broomsticks.
Yeah. So compared to France, who had quite an uneventful, normal, stable childhood, apart from the fact he was a little pyromaniac, whatever. Nothing actually happened to him, though. There was a little bit of dysfunction going on in Theuns' childhood. His mother's getting married every 5 fucking minutes. His real dad's in prison, never seen him.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a satanic witch and all. Whatever. After school, to parallel Frans again, Theuns goes and joins the military as well. That was his choice, so he wanted to join the military. Whereas with Frans, his parents wanted him to join the military. But it didn't last because he'd fell into drugs and alcohol, and largely due to this, he just sort of fell out of the military. He just didn't get anywhere. And while he was trying to purchase some alcohol at the age of 18, surprise, surprise, somebody's got a little pea or whatever it was called. I can't even remember the word because it's weird. Little
Pea cafe.
Pea cafe. Shiwi. The shiwi thing that I got. Peewee. Fake alcohol thing. He went to purchase alcohol off of France. A chance meeting that brought together 2 absolute fucking crazy
Psychos
monsters
with witch girlfriends.
with witchy girlfriends, and they would go on to commit the most heinous crimes together. Just because one of them was selling alcohol and one of them was a massive alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just how shitty things happen. And I've got a picture that I meant to put on the screen when I was telling you what people referred to him as, but that's how people saw him. Either as a little crazy child or a fucking demonic doll. So yeah. Tells you everything you need to know, really, doesn't it? Right, and there's just a little picture of them together. Put that on the screen as well. There you go. God's gift to women. I can see why women and witches were falling over themselves to get to these two, can't you? Right. So these 2 men, and I use the term men very loosely, were a lot of things. They were Satanists, self-proclaimed Satanists, criminals, psychopaths.
Alcoholics.
One of them was an alcoholic at least. One of them was just selling alcohol to alcoholics. Psychopaths, and they were both sexual predators, both independently and together. Frans is what you would class as the dominant personality. He's the older of the 2. When they met, he was 25, the one was 18.
Yeah.
So he was the dominant personality, and Theuns was the more submissive, although that doesn't make him any less responsible or guilty. And it doesn't make the other one any the more guilty. They're both equally as guilty for what they went on to do. So in February of 1994, this is getting on from be 6 to 9 months after they met. They'd only met shortly before they started actually doing some quite evil, weird shit together. Frans, on his own, went and abducted a 19-year-old student that was sitting in her car outside a pizza parlour. He held a gun to her head and told her to move over. He then drove her to a secluded area and he sexually assaulted her. And then, this absolutely twisted, sick motherfucker did one of the most disgusting things that I think I've ever heard in one of these cases of sexual assault. After sexually assaulting this 19-year-old girl, he took her and drove her to a cafe and he played out a fucking date with her. He made her sit down and he ordered her food and he made her sit and eat with him. And then he bought her a fucking rose as if they were on a romantic fucking dinner out. All the time he's got a gun and she knows he's got a gun and he's just obviously sexually assaulted her. He then took her to another location where he sexually assaulted her again. He then drove her back into the city and he let her go. She was absolutely traumatized and terrified, and it took her about a week to actually go and report it to the police. That was at the end of February. And early March, he was arrested for this. But he was then released on bail. So this is March 1994. He's been arrested for kidnapping a woman at gunpoint and sexually assaulting her twice. And he's out on bail immediately.
There's a problem with that, isn't there?
Oh, it gets worse. So then we skip forward a few months and we're on the 4th of December 1994. And this is the next incident, at least, that we know of, although there is strong suspicion and speculation that between March and December there were more victims that either didn't come forward or were unable to come forward.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as you'll find out, that's quite a long wait for
Well, it
these.
might even happen before then. That's just the first reported one.
So, this time, on the 4th of December, we've got both of them. Both Frans and Theuns. We approached a 21-year-old woman who at the time was 3 months pregnant. They put a gun into her stomach and took her to a secluded area where both of them sexually assaulted her. They then stood there in front of her after having violated her and discussed whether they should kill her or not. And they eventually decided to let her go because she was begging for her life and the life of her unborn child. I don't think they let her go because they gave a shit, but they let her go. She then immediately went and reported the incident to the police, and that very same day, both of them were arrested.
Right,
for the
so
crime.
that's twice they've done it, so they're going away for some time, yeah? Is that right?
So, same day. However, they were then released on their own recognizance and ordered to return for a court date in January.
That's twice now, and they still get to go out.
Well, twice at least for Frans. Theuns wasn't involved in the first one.
Right.
Although he's probably not done other shit, to be honest, because the police knew who both of them were straight away, so they must have had, like, he was on the radar. But they were released on this is the 4th of December. Remember that? 4th of December. And they're released on their own recognizance. Now, this decision to release these two evil sons of bitches, and that's what they are, would end up facilitating one of the most horrific crimes in South African history. The prosecutor that released them on their own recognizance would later claim that he wasn't aware that Frans had another charge pending for,
look at the
for
bloody
sexual
paperwork.
assault.
Do your work job.
But that's utter bullshit, in my opinion. Even if it is true, then it's just sheer incompetence, isn't it?
Yeah, somewhere
That's incompetence.
that's wrong.
You would fucking check. I mean, if somebody's arrested for something, you would check it. They've not got any priors or anything pending.
Related, yeah.
So, whatever. In my opinion, though, it's also irrelevant whether he had anything pending or not, even if he'd never done anything like it before. To release two people on their own recognizance after a horrific, and it was horrific, sexual assault, where they actually went on to discuss in front of the victim whether or not they should actually fucking kill her, is beyond disgusting. And like, what the fuck are you doing? But they did. So this is, again, I'm going to say it again, this is the 4th of December. 14 days later, we get to the events of today's case. 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, after they were released on their own recognizance. But before we get into what actually happened, I'm going to introduce you to Alison. And that's the only person that's really important in today's case. And this is Alison Botha. Beautiful, beautiful young woman. Both inside and out, as you'll find out. So, it's going to start to get a little bit thingy in a minute, so brace yourself. We'll go over a brief history and then get into what happened to her. I need a little drink though. Excuse me. Right, Alison Botha was born on September the 22nd, 1967 in Port Elizabeth, South Africa. And I've actually got a map for you because I'm very organised. There's South Africa, right down the bottom there, little white circle, Port Elizabeth. Although it's not called that anymore, and we'll get to that in a minute because I don't want to try and say it yet. Let me get past this little bit first. Because they've changed the name. And yeah, you'll see why that's going to be fun. So, her parents were called Brian and Claire, and they divorced when she was 10 years old. And she spent most of her childhood living with her mother, Claire, and her brother Neil, who was 18 months older than her. In her early years, she led a normal life, just normal, happy childhood. Nothing of significance stands out, despite her parents' divorce, but that didn't really affect her in any way whatsoever. She attended the Collegiate High School for Girls in Port Elizabeth, and that's that place right there. And she graduated as head girl, which in itself tells you that she was obviously quite studious and quite popular at her school. And although Alison herself will tell you that she felt that she lacked direction and she wasn't the brightest student, I think that's more modesty, because you don't get made head girl if you're like not putting any effort in and you're, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's something that you got to earn, and you've got to have the respect of your peers, etc. So yeah, bit of modesty there, but she didn't have direction. She didn't know what she wanted to do. When she left school, she went to college and done a secretarial course, and then she took some time out, and quite confident as well, because she was quite young at the time, and she went and travelled the world. She travelled all over the world for a couple of years before she returned home to Port Elizabeth. And when she did return home, her mother was so happy because she had her home and she felt she was safe, which is ironic, really. Because all that time she was away for almost 3 years travelling the world. Her mother was worried sick about her, and something was going to happen to her.
She was in these strange locations.
Yeah, she was all. Yeah, she didn't know where she was, and she was just so glad when she finally returned, because she felt that she was safe. And the irony in that is, well, little did she know. So yeah. So she's returned home and she gained employment as an insurance broker, which she apparently really enjoyed, something that she loved to do. Our colleagues were our friends. They all had quite an active social life, very friendly with each other. So now for a little side note that it's not relevant, but I'm going to tell you anyway, just in case anybody complains, because people like to complain about things. The town of Port Elizabeth is no longer called Port Elizabeth. It was renamed in 2021. Are you ready? It was renamed...
The letters doesn't look like it should go together.
I've no idea what it was renamed.
Looks like an anagram.
I don't know. I'll spell it to you. It's G for Grace, Q for Quebec. That doesn't even work, do it? GQ, what? E-B-E-R-H-A. So it's Gequebera. I don't know what it is. I don't know how to say it. I don't know. But that's what it's called now. Apparently in 2021 it was renamed because apparently Port Elizabeth is offensive now because it's named after the wife of somebody that settled there hundreds of years ago.
So
and
it's
all offensive and shit.
Brought this up.
However, the people that actually live there petitioned against it getting called because they want to keep it as Port Elizabeth, because it's like a really random.
Can't say it either.
It's a really random dialect that very few people speak, like a tribal dialect or something. And they can't say it either. So if they can't say it and they're South African, I've got no chance.
That's all the weird.
Anyway, before anybody complains, I'm going to call it Port Elizabeth because I can't fucking say that.
And everyone wants it to be that.
The people that live there still call it Port Elizabeth because they can't say that either. And at the time this crime was committed, it was called Port Elizabeth, so it didn't come from me. Anyway, that's that bit done. So, we now get to the 18th of December 1994, although we're going to start on the 17th because it was early morning of the 18th.
Yeah.
So we're going to start on the 17th, but the events actually, the main part of it takes place on the 18th of December. So, right, I need so much to drink. I've not even opened this yet. On Saturday, December the 17th, sorry about that. His fault.
That's my fault.
Because he's not saying any of the words.
Because I didn't.
He's making me say all the words. So on Saturday, December the 17th, Alison had spent most of the day relaxing at the beach. And you might be thinking, well, why is she at the beach?
I actually thought that when I first saw that.
It's December. Is she crazy? Why is she at the beach?
Because I hadn't heard that bit before with the sunbathing until recently.
Yeah, so she's at the beach. It's like a week before Christmas and she's on the beach, and that's weird.
That's really weird.
It's weird to us because we're in the northern hemisphere. But in the southern hemisphere, it's summer. Because they have Christmas in summer and it's weird. So I'm sorry if you have Christmas in summer, you're weird because it's supposed to be freezing. We're all freezing our asses off, and she's on the beach, and like so is everybody else. But yeah, when I read it, I was like, "Have you got the date wrong? You were at the beach. What crazy people are on the beach a week before Christmas?" But yeah, I was southern hemisphere. Anyway, so she's enjoying basically a perfect summer's day in December on the beach with her friends. As the sun set, the group began to get a bit peckish, so Alison suggested to her friends to go back to her house and they can order some food and continue hanging out, etc. So a while later in the evening, they ordered some pizza and had a good time playing Boulder Dash, which is yeah. So I can even imagine because many a time had a good game of Boulder Dash, which I'm fucking good at because I'm very good at making shit up. That's very convincing. And I beat Bob all the time, but he thinks he's good, but he's not as good as me. Hey, Bob. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she's playing Boulder Dash. Bloody good game.
We just mentioned that recently.
Yeah.
And that was another fact that I'd never heard before, and I was like, whoa, what?
If you don't know what it is, you've got to, like, guess what the real answer is. But everybody else makes up a fake answer, and I'm very good at making up fake answers, and, like, yeah. Anyway, that's not very relevant, but whatever. Look, Bob, you know that I'm the winner.
The winner.
So, Saturday evening soon turns into Sunday morning, and around 1 a.m. on December the 18th, Alison's guests decided it was time for them to head home. Some of them didn't have their own transport, so as it was getting quite late and it was dark, concerned about their safety and being a very good fucking friend, Alison volunteered to give them a lift home, and so she did. And there's Alison. I'm going to put loads of pictures of her, just randomly, because it's about her. It's not about that. It's not about those two.
I never put them two arseholes on the cover picture.
No, they're not even on the cover because fuck them.
Especially when you hear what
you'll find out exactly. You're probably thinking at the moment, you've been a bit harsh. I mean, fair enough, they had satanic witch teenage girlfriends and one of them set fire to a school, but you're being a bit harsh. Oh, nay. Just you wait. You're going to hate them and all. You're going to hate them. So it was around 3 a.m. by the time that she'd finished taking her friends home, etc. And she was then arriving back on her own street. Unfortunately, as she got closer to her home, she realised that her usual parking space was now taken by another vehicle. Now, I'm going to assume that this annoyed her, because if it was me, I'd be like, well, where the fuck's stealing my space at 2 o'clock in the morning? What the fuck? I'd be annoyed. She probably wasn't. She's probably a far nicer person than I am, but I'd be like, what? It's like 3 o'clock in the morning, like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Who? What are they waiting on me to leave the house? I'd be like making up all these shit in my head and like driving myself mental about it. But obviously, somebody stole her usual space, so she's like forced to go and find an alternative.
My cousins refer to it as car chess, because you'll find that because when you've then got to park somewhere else, you're then taking somebody else's spot.
And they've got to move.
And they've got to move. Then as soon as someone goes, everyone jumps in their car to get back into that position, and they call it. And it's like that, isn't it? I think everyone experiences that.
So she's got no choice but to go and find an alternative parking spot. So she drives further up her street, and she finds an empty space underneath a tree, and she pulls in. She applies the handbrake, she switches off the engine, and she reaches over to the passenger seat to collect a bag of laundry that she'd went and picked up earlier. And she was just about to exit the vehicle and head home when all of a sudden somebody else opened the driver's side door. And that's about to get real. Before she had time to react, Alison found that she had a sharp knife held up against her throat. The knife was being wielded by a man who instructed her to stay calm and move over to the passenger seat. Very similar to what happened back in March, but that was a gun at that point. Now he's got a knife. And he told her to remain quiet, stating, "If you try anything else, I will kill you right here and now." Alison, surprised, shocked, terrified, followed his orders, and she slid over to the passenger seat. This is Frans, by the way. Frans got into the car and turned the engine back on and began driving.
Well, you may not know. You wouldn't go react. I mean, that's a shock. You ain't got time to process it for a start, let alone considering what you're going to do. Yeah. So, Alison, as she sat there, and this is like the first thoughts that she's having as she's processing what's happening, she thought to herself, the doors aren't locked. And she momentarily considered just flinging the door open and jumping out, even though the car's in motion now. But she, at this point, was thinking, this is a carjacking. And if she simply just done what she was told, he would soon just release her. It'd be fine. Everything was going to be okay. She's not going to get harmed. She could kill herself jumping out of a moving vehicle, but if she just complied, it'll be fine. That's what she's hoping anyway. Well, she also probably thought, if I did jump, things can go wrong. I may not make it, and then I'm in trouble off of him, or I may hurt myself even more.
So that's at least what she's hoping at this stage. Yeah. She was also understandably in shock and disbelief, and was probably somewhat paralysed with fear, even though she's thinking the doors aren't locked. She's probably terrified to move. He's got a knife at her throat. He's just come out of nowhere. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. It's pitch black, and you've now got this man, you don't know who he is, just driving you off in your own vehicle. So after a short while, he actually began speaking to her, which a bit creepy. He told her, and this is for Kelly. This is for Kelly, and I'm not making this shit up. He told her that his name was Clinton.
Not a Clinton, maybe, but...
Which it's obviously, that's bullshit. We now know that it was Frans, but he said his name was Clinton. Yes, Kelly. Every fucking time. Yeah. And he said that all he wanted to do was borrow her car for a short while, and that if she behaved herself, he would release her unharmed. Just going to put it out there, he's a fucking liar. And I'm just going to keep showing you pictures of Alison because it's Alison's story. You begin to understand why I keep showing you pictures of her as we continue.
Yeah, Kelly was right. Who would have believed it?
Every time.
We've got Balderdash, which was mentioned before, and this it's all relevant to everyone watching that.
Yeah. Alison tried to remain calm and hide her fear from this man. He asked her what her name was, and she also lied because she's thinking, I don't want this man to know anything about me. First thing it popped into her head, Susan. She told him her name was Susan. He asked her if she had a boyfriend, which just none of your fucking business.
Quite random, yeah. Like
none of your business. Why are you having a conversation with me? Fuck off. But he asked her if she had a boyfriend, and she said yes, she did. Quite quick thinking on her part. She said yes, she did. She didn't, but she said that he was at home waiting for her, and he'd be starting to worry, which was quite clever, to be honest, because it's putting into the mindset of the abductor. Although this one, unfortunately, didn't give a shit, but it's putting into the mindset that she's going to be missed. People will be looking for her.
Right.
People are expecting her. People are waiting for her. And he then told her that he needed to collect some money that he was owed. And as soon as he'd done that, he'd let her go. That's the only reason he needed the car, was to go and collect some money that he's owed. However, he soon pulled up in a street, and another person approached the car and opened the back door and slid into the back seat. And then the car began driving. This was Theuns. And Alison stated that as soon as she caught a glimpse of him in the rear view mirror and saw the emptiness and the evil in his eyes, the first thing that she thought to herself was, I'm not going to survive this. Just by looking at his eyes in the rear view mirror, like everything changed. She had hope up until that stage that this is a carjacking, it's going to be fine. But just looking at Theuns and the just nothingness, the evil that she saw in those eyes, she knew. So as she sat there, terrified now, absolutely terrified, she noticed that the car was heading out of town. Soon the houses were replaced with sheer darkness, and the street lamps that lit the way were replaced by nothing more than the night sky. It's then that she began to realise that she was in serious fucking trouble.
you can imagine it. You can just
She's just sitting there.
You can't imagine it. Like you're like, oh my god, you know.
Even at this point, even though she knew she was in serious trouble, she could not even begin to imagine the horror that was coming. Our abductors had taken her to a remote location outside of the city. Slowly, the car pulled to a halt in the darkness. She could hear the tyres running through grit, broken glass, and gravel. Frans was the first to break the silence. He told her in a cold, clear tone that they were going to have sex. And then he asked her if she was going to fight. She knew that she was outnumbered. She wanted to fight, but she knew she had no chance. So she hesitantly said no. In that moment, what choice did she have? What else could she say, really? As Theuns got out from the back seat of the car, Frans then ordered Alison and assisted her in stripping off all of her clothes. Just how degrading that even is. But that was in the beginning. He then forced her to conduct, at knife point, forced her to conduct oral sex on him, warning her that if she screamed or bit, that he'd slit her fucking throat. He then proceeded to perform oral sex on Alison, and he even made disgusting, vile comments like, does your boyfriend do it as good as this? And told her how nice she tasted as he was doing it. Fucking sicko. He then conducted a harrowing sexual assault. And while he was doing that, he was whispering sweet nothings at her throughout, as if they were in some sort of fucking relationship. As if he was making love to her.
Part of a Mills and Boons book or something.
And this is because in his twisted mind, like when he'd done with that other woman and he took her on a date and bought her a rose, there's a term, gentleman rapist, which is a complete fucking oxymoron because no rapist is a gentleman. And I'm probably going to get this banned because I just said the R word.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to say the R word on YouTube.
Yeah, well, they're
whatever.
More words.
There's a term, gentleman, and that's what he falls under, even though he's not a gentleman. He's a fucking evil wanker. He's not even human at this point. And they try and emulate, like they're in a relationship and they've got apparently respect. This is what it's classed as. They've got no respect, but they show their victim respect. The whole point that they're doing what they're doing is showing no respect.
That's trying to say to everyone, perceive to everyone, I'm not that bad. Because look, even though I've done this, I went and took them out for a date, brought them a rose, and
justifying their actions.
Yeah,
but nothing. You could say all the nicest things under the sun. Actions speak louder than words, and nothing justifies the sick motherfucker's actions. And I'm just going to keep showing you Alison. It's going to get worse now. He sexually assaulted her in every way imaginable and in ways that you couldn't even imagine, to be honest. However, once he was finished, instead of letting her go and leaving the scene, he turned to his accomplice / friend,
his little Chucky pal,
Theuns, who was outside the car watching this entire time.
It's not weird.
Which is...
Well, that's all weird, let's be honest. Yeah. Maybe it's not so weird for them, yeah.
And he said to Theuns, would you like to make love to the lovely lady too? As if he'd just made love to her. To which Theuns replied, no, I'm not going to make love to her. I'm going to fuck the bitch. Now Alison had to endure a second sexual assault. Now, as if the first one wasn't horrific enough, this one is an angry little motherfucker. He's not even going to pretend that he's in a relationship and try and be nice.
No.
He hated women, and all his hatred towards women was inflicted upon Alison in every way imaginable. Even as he forced himself upon her, he actually hated her more and blamed her for the fact that this wasn't consensual.
So while the other one seemed to be getting off on the
while
fact
he's
that...
doing what he's doing, because he can't get women to do it voluntarily, he's hating her even more.
Yeah.
Because he's doing it. Mm-hmm. It's just, what the fuck? So while he's doing this, he's not just violating her, he's also beating the shit out of her and choking her, violently choking her, to the point that she lost consciousness. It was during this loss of consciousness that Alison talks about this because she thinks it's very important to her story, and we'll get to why later. During this really savage beating and assault and strangulation, that she involuntarily emptied her bowels in the backseat of the car.
I'm not being funny, but I'd probably done that a while ago.
That not only emphasises the severity of the assault against her, but it's also an important factor which we'll discuss later. It's very important. So eventually, after what probably to Alison felt like a fucking eternity. They were done. Or at least they were done with that part, anyway. They'd finished using her, and she was now hoping and praying that they would just take the car and leave.
Yeah.
She was in severe pain. She was exhausted. And she just wanted them to leave. They dragged her to the car and threw her naked, battered body onto the ground, where the sand, charcoal, and glass cut into her skin. As she lay there, she prayed that it was over, telling herself that they'd violated her body, but they'd not broken her, and just her body. She expected that they were just going to get in a car and drive off and leave her there, but instead, to her horror, they didn't leave. They instead did what they'd done the last time. They stood there over her broken, battered body and had a debate over what they were going to do with her. They were debating on whether or not they had to kill her. Can you even fucking imagine? Just lying there while these two evil bastards who just done all that are debating whether or not they're going to kill you. It was at this point that Alison learned their real names. Up until then, she didn't know the name of the evil cunt in the back. And I'm going to use a C word, I don't care. She thought the driver was Clinton, but she soon discovered that that wasn't his name, because they were referring to each other by their actual names during this discussion. She overheard that his name was actually Frans, and the other man was referred to as Theuns. And in her head, she's making a mental note of that. She's thinking, I've got to remember this. So in her head, over and over again, she's thinking, Frans, Theuns, Frans, Theuns. She had to remember their names so that she could tell the authorities who did this. So over and over, she's like, don't forget, Frans, Theuns, Frans, Theuns. She lay there, repeating the names over and over and over in her head as they stood over her, debating if she would live or die. To her horror, she heard them decide that she had to die because, in their words, if she lived, she would go to the police like that last bitch had. Before she had even time to process the enormity of what she had just heard, Frans was once again mounting her, but this time he had a knife in his hand, and he began to repeatedly stab Alison, firstly in the abdomen and then in the private area. This was a horrific, frenzied, violent attack, and he stabbed her in that area 37 times. 37 times. Can you imagine the hatred, the energy that he put into that? 37 times. Simultaneously, while he's stabbing her and destroying everything that makes her a woman, really. Going for her reproductive organs, etc. Theuns is strangling her. And he strangled her so severely that he actually crushed her windpipe, restricting her ability to breathe. The pair thought at that point that they'd killed her. It was done. She's dead. But then her leg twitched, and they were fucking angry about that. It enraged them. Like, why is this bitch not dead? That's
How dare she be alive?
How dare she be alive? They were really fucking angry that her leg twitched. How dare she still be alive? At this point, Theuns then took the knife and he slit her throat from ear to ear. Once. He slit it again. Twice. 3 times. 4 times. 5 times. 6 times. Frans took the knife 7 times. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Slash, slash, slash. Kept going. 14. 15 times. 16. 17. He slit her fucking throat 17 times.
Well, the pair did anyway, between
them. Because she's got 37 stab wounds in her abdomen, and her throat has been slit from ear to ear 17 just let that sink in. 17 fucking times. And I'm going to show you Alison again. At this point, they were convinced that she was dead now. And they've slit her fucking throat 17 times. And even if she's not dead quite yet, it's inevitable. She'll be dead soon. However, in this attempt to take her life, Frans had unknowingly given Alison a lifeline. You might be thinking, what? As he slashed repeatedly at her throat, he actually cut her windpipe.
Yeah.
Now, as you remember, this was crushed by Theuns when he strangled her. And by him cutting her windpipe,
she could breathe again.
It allowed her to breathe again.
Mm-hmm.
But even though she could breathe, she was barely conscious. She was in extreme pain. Unimaginable pain. She wanted this to end. Who could blame her?
Mm-hmm.
Even if that meant death, she'd had enough. She wasn't aware of the full severity of her injuries. But just by the brutal attack alone, she believed that she was surely destined to die right there in the dirt. Her attackers headed back to the car, and just before they drove off into the night, they threw her clothes and belongings out the window, and then they drove off. So as she lay there in the dirt, beyond broken, absolutely beyond anything that any human should be able to endure, the car faded into the distance, and Alison soon only heard this strange noise. And at first it confused her. She's like, what the hell? What is that? That's like, she couldn't put her finger on what it was. She had no idea. It was the sound of her breathing, a rasping breath through her severed windpipe. And that's all she heard. At this point, she actually felt herself leave her body and rise above it. And as she rose up above her own body, she's looking down on herself, broken, in the dirt. But there's silence now. That noise, that horrible, horrible, raspy noise is gone. And so is the pain. It's just silence and peace. And in her mind, it just dawns on her in her mind that she's got to make the choice in this moment. She could either go back to her body and try to live, or she could stay there. And as soon as it crossed her mind that she wanted to live, just like that. In an instant, she was back in her body, back on the floor, and the rasping sound of the erratic breath filled her ears once again.
Mm-hmm. And the pain, I should imagine, returned. And again, that's a selfless decision when you think about it. Even though we don't know if she had that choice really in reality, but you know, if what she's saying, she tuned, she was sort of kind of conscious, and she made that decision to come back. And it weren't for her to go back to save her own life. Obviously, it was because of what you learn in a little while that she wants to obviously not let these people get away with it. That's all it was, because he would want to return to that, mess, to be honest.
So, even having made the decision to live, she still felt like she was going to die. And in her mind, she was determined to put her last moments, if this was going to be her last moments on this earth, she was going to put them to use. Because she didn't want these two evil bastards to not only get away with this attack, she didn't want that to happen, but she didn't want them to do it to anybody else. So with every ounce of energy that she could muster, she stretched out her bloody hand and she used her finger to write into the dirt. Firstly, she wrote Frans, and then she wrote Theuns, thinking, and I read, just thinking when they eventually found her body, that's what she's thinking. When the police eventually find my dead body, at least they'll know we did it.
Well, hopefully that they'd figure it out, because, yeah.
So when she wrote Frans and Theuns, she continued writing, because if she didn't survive, making sure that those two fucking bastards were caught wasn't the only thing that she had to say. So she dug her finger into the dirt again, and she carved out more letters. This is fucking heartbreaking. This, in her mind, might be the final message before she left this world, if she couldn't find enough strength to survive. So below the names of her attackers that she scratched into the dirt, she wrote the words, "I love Mum."
There are two very important messages, obviously, who her attackers were. Hopefully people would figure it out, and a message to her mother. I mean, so you can see where her mindset was and how she was feeling, and how much pain and agony and stress and fear.
So, as she lay there, she thought about the choice that she had just made. She made the choice to come back and try to live. She wanted to live. She wanted to make something of herself. She wanted to survive. Up until this point, as you know, she had no idea what she wanted to do. She was intelligent. She was successful in things but she didn't have a plan for the future. But she now wanted a life. She wanted a future. She wanted to be important. She wanted to do something important. Her whole body was in fucking agony, as you can imagine. And she was in the middle of nowhere. But she knew that she couldn't just lie there. Nobody's going to turn up there. She had to get to somewhere where people were going to be. And just that in itself, when you think of the extent of her injuries, the undertaking of that, how the hell is she going to do that? She had to at least try and get to the road. She didn't even know how far away the road was. She had no idea.
Where she was, really.
But she had to try and find help. If she was going to survive, she had to go and try and find help, because help wasn't going to find her. So she struggled. Don't know how long it took her, but she struggled to her knees. Every movement that she made was excruciating. But she eventually was on her hands and knees on the floor. And at this stage, Alison says that she felt a weird sensation on her legs. It felt cold and it felt wet. So she took one of her hands to feel what was this on her legs. Now this night was also a full moon, so she had some degree of vision.
Right.
There was some light that she could kind of make out. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was a full moon. So she takes one of her hands as she's on her hands and knees in the dirt to feel what this is. This weird sensation on her legs. And then she kind of saw as well, as she felt and saw and realised what it was. And to her absolute fucking horror, she saw what it was. It was her intestines, because she'd been disemboweled. They were pouring out from her body onto the floor, because obviously she's gone from being on her back, turned herself round, and she's now got her abdomen facing down towards the floor, gaping wound, and her insides are just falling out of her.
This is terrible, because you got to think of all the different things that's going on so far. You imagine this now. What the hell is she going to do? And I mean, I've had a similar experience where I've had to hold parts of my innards back in myself, and that's not the severity of this. I mean, and plus you got to think she's got all these different pains going on, even just in that one spot, the inside, the outside. There's a big space in her body now, so that's moving about, causing more pain, more agony, sore. And what she's got a puzzle now in her hand. She's got to try and fit this. I mean, that's just unbelievably scary. It's just really strange and a unique experience that nobody really wants to.
So yeah, she's been disemboweled, and her intestines, etc., are falling out of her body. And then she sees in the moonlight the pile of clothes that had been flung out of the car. And she grabbed for her denim shirt. And she used this denim shirt to basically gather up her own insides, really, and scoop them off the floor and put them back in the gaping hole that used to be her abdomen. And then she used the clothes as a kind of tourniquet to hold them inside, but she still had to keep one hand on there to hold it in. And then she began to try and crawl. Very slowly, she moved forward. She wasn't even sure, as I say, how far the road was. She just knew she had to try and get there. Charcoal and glass cut into her knees and her one hand that she was using as she tried to move forward. And she soon realised that this wasn't going to work. Because it's very difficult to crawl anyway, with one hand.
Well, yeah.
Never mind with the extent of the injuries that you got, but she's got to keep one hand holding her insides in. She can't take that hand away.
No.
And she realised that crawling wasn't an option. It was too difficult. It wasn't going to work. She had to try and stand up. She had to try and fucking walk. That's the only way. She had to get on her feet. Now, where this woman found the strength to even get to her feet, considering the horrific injuries, just taking into account the abdominal injuries on their own, forget the throat and everything.
The complication of it as well.
Where she found the strength to even get on her feet, I have no idea. Yeah. I can't even begin to comprehend. But she did. She did it. She got on her feet and she was still bent over double, holding her insides in. And as she stabilised herself on her feet, she then started to lift her upper body up so that she was standing upright. And at this point, everything went black. One minute she could see the moon in front of her, which was lighting the way. And as soon as she was completely upright, everything just went fucking black. There was nothing.
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. And this just confused the shit out. She just couldn't understand why. Everything's just darkness. She couldn't fathom why. She was thinking, have I gone blind? Was there blood in her eyes? Was there something happened to her head? Was there blood running down her face? Was her hair that was probably matted in blood covering her eyes? She just couldn't figure out why. In 1 second, she could see, although not, I mean, as good as you're going to see just in the moonlight.
Yeah.
And then the next second, darkness. So with the only hand that she's got left, because our one's still holding on, still holding in her insides, she puts her hand up to her face. And there was nothing there. She's just feeling for her face. And can you imagine? Feeling for your face and there's nothing there. And she's disoriented and she's thinking, what the fuck? That's like, you expect your face to be there and there's absolutely nothing there. It's just the confusion. I can't even. So she felt down for her neck. And where her neck was, there was a gaping hole. Her hand went completely inside her neck. Because it had been slit. Her throat had been slit 17 times. And it had a massive fucking wound. And as she felt around, she soon discovered, to her absolute fucking horror, why, when she went and felt for her face wasn't there. Not only had this woman been disemboweled, she'd been almost completely decapitated, and the actual motion of standing upright caused her head to tip backwards because there was nothing holding it up.
So basically her head had almost
and her head
toppled off.
Her head was resting on her shoulder blade. It was hanging on by a fucking thread. Backwards. I can't even put my head that far back because it's not possible. But she's got nothing there. It's just hanging on by a thread. So with her only hand that she's got left, she's still holding on her inside. She has to grab her head from here. It's here. And pull it up so that she could see. To see where she's going.
Like I said, the stomach is bad enough, the pain and all that. Now
it's
she's got to hold her head together as well as her stomach.
And this isn't fiction.
No.
This is a true fucking story. This isn't a movie. So she grabbed her head. It's almost completely decapitated. And now she's holding her head in place. Well, she's got to. And she's holding her insides in.
So she can't even support herself elsewhere, because she's obviously sore and
I can't even
damaged everywhere else.
I can't even comprehend the strength and the sheer fucking will to survive that it took to get herself upright. And to go through all that. But it wasn't over. She was still a long way for the road. She didn't know how far. And she had to still try and get there. She didn't know how far she had to go. But even Alison herself, and this is just mind-blowing, this part, she can't explain the next part at all. The best explanation that Alison's got is that an angel carried her. She said that she felt herself being lifted above the road, as if she was just floating above it and floating forward. And then the next thing she knew, she's lying in the road. She didn't walk there. She couldn't have walked there. She's almost completely decapitated. Her insides are She's disemboweled.
Yeah.
She should be dead by all
Plus all
intents and
the other
purposes.
injuries and
She should be
damage.
dead. And she's got no idea how she got there. But one minute she feels herself getting lifted and just floating, and the next minute she's lying in the road. I just can't even. And there's a very poignant picture in the documentary. The documentary, by the way, is called Alison, and you can watch it on Amazon Prime if you've got Amazon Prime. I don't know where else you can get it, but it's definitely on Amazon Prime. And yeah.
So somehow she got herself together, put herself together as best as she could. I mean, that doesn't even portray it
No.
properly. You can imagine. I mean, the head, obviously, she was holding the head together. That's not representing that for a start. But wow, wow.
She didn't know.
Yeah.
How long she lay there before she actually saw headlights in the distance. A car was coming. And her momentary relief that, oh my God, I'm going to get help, soon turned to fear as it flashed through her mind the possibility that this was those two evil twats coming back to finish her off.
Or to check that they were successful. And plus, a lot of these people do like going back to the crime scene, don't they?
But she could do nothing but just lie there and wait. And as this car got closer and it slowed down, she's praying, please don't let it be them. Please let it be help. Didn't let it be them. But it was neither. Because as suddenly as this car approached, it fucking sped off into the night.
Again, we've heard that before, haven't we?
Yeah, we've heard that before.
In a similar story, which...
yeah. Mary Vincent?
Yeah.
Now, I can understand coming across a woman lying naked and bleeding in the road is going to be a bit of a shock to people. But to fucking just slow down to a stop and see her and then drive off. Shameful.
Seems to be too much of that going on.
Shameful. After that, she's just left there again, lying bloodied and broken in the road. A few more minutes passed, which to Alison must have felt like forever.
A lifetime.
Hours. But it was only minutes. Before she saw another set of headlights approaching. This time as the car got closer and it came to a halt, she heard the doors open and she heard footsteps coming towards her, racing towards her.
I bet again she's just in fear, because imagine that.
And then she saw a face. And to her absolute relief, it wasn't her attacker's face. And I can't even fathom the relief that she must have felt in that moment, and the fear she felt hearing the footsteps and not knowing who was coming, to then see that it wasn't them. The face that she saw was a man called Theuns, not to be confused with Theuns.
Yeah, they're very similar names.
Very similar names.
It's a bit of a shame, really, but
because
they're completely opposite. But you know,
he was called Theuns Ellard, and he was a veterinary student that was on holiday in Port Elizabeth with his friends, and that's him. He raced towards Alison, and seeing the state of her neck injuries, he actually ripped off his own shirt and ripped it into different strands to use as bandages.
Again,
sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, here we go again, where you've got like bad things happening and the light at the end of the tunnel, and somebody seemed to, who she needed to turn up, this seemed to be turning up.
So he's trying to patch her up as best he can, and his veterinary training actually allowed him to recognise that her thyroid was exposed and was hanging outside of her neck. And he was able to use the limited veterinary training that he had at this stage to tuck it back inside, which will be relevant later. He then held her hand and he spoke to her. One of his friends in the car, and just remember when this is. This is 1994. One of his friends in the car had a mobile phone. And
extremely
in
rare.
1994, this was brand new technology. Very
Remember the
very
massive car
rare
phones
in
and
South
stuff?
Africa. Hardly anybody had a mobile phone, but somebody in this car had a mobile phone, and that in itself is a fucking miracle for the time period it was. And it's also a miracle that it's in the middle of nowhere, and he was able to. There was a signal. He got a signal. You can't even get a signal 30 years later in the middle of nowhere, but he got a reception and he made that phone call and he called emergency services.
Well, you got to remember, there's probably, you think it's like you said, getting reception today, and there was probably only one mast in like
when nobody had the phones.
Miles.
He got reception. He managed to call emergency services.
I didn't even think of that part.
So Tian was determined to keep her alive because he saw how much she'd fought so far, because he saw the bundled up clothes that she'd tried to put tourniquets on her abdomen, and at first he thought it was just the neck injuries, and he tried to pull this away to see what he didn't realise because she'd covered it all up. He didn't realise about the other injuries.
That was dark as well.
He kept telling her that she had beautiful green eyes and that she had to keep them open and look at them because he wanted to see her beautiful green eyes. She couldn't speak, obviously, so he got her to communicate by squeezing his hand, once for yes, twice for no. The ambulance that he called should have took no more than 15 minutes to arrive. 15 minutes passed, and then 20 minutes, and then 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, still not coming, 50. 55 minutes later, ambulance pulls up, and she's still alive. He's kept her alive, he spoke to her, he's kept her going. But 55
Why did it take so long? Do you reckon that was because it was so remote that they didn't know where they were going?
It should have took 15 minutes. But there's also the thing, what happens on the way. So, yeah. So, when paramedics did arrive, this man here was a fucking hero. He insisted that he was going, he wasn't leaving her, he was coming. He wasn't going to leave her now. He was invested. He'd spent the last 50 minutes lying on the road, keeping her conscious, just talking to her,
comfortable.
So he got an ambulance, and he remembers the frustration that he had on the way to the hospital because they were driving so fucking slowly. They was in no rush, and in retrospect, he says, well, they probably just assumed that there was no point rushing because the injuries, they didn't think she was going to survive. They didn't think there was any chance. But they finally got to the hospital. There was no urgency in getting her there. But she did make it. She arrived at the hospital and was rushed straight into surgery. The doctors assessed her wounds. They were all fucking shocked. They'd never seen anything like it before or since. And the on-call surgeon was called. When he arrived, the ER doctor, told him that they would need an ear, nose and throat specialist as well as a general surgeon, because the on-call surgeon is a general surgeon. Told him that they need an ENT specialist as well because the wounds to her neck and the fact that she'd be almost completely decapitated required an ENT specialist. And this on-call doctor, which was a rotation of several doctors from miles and miles around.
So it was
random as fuck.
Yeah.
This on-call doctor was actually from India, and he's like, no, I'm actually trained in India as an ENT, but we do general surgery as well, so I'm trained in both. Wow. So by just
again
exactly what they needed, and he happened to be the on-call doctor. So he went into surgery with the anesthesiologist who does speak in the documentary, Alison, and the ENT doctor, and they spent absolute hours in surgery, and the lengths that they went to try and help this woman stay alive. They had to take her intestines and go through it meticulously. At some points with a scrubbing brush to scrub it clean because it was filthy, and they couldn't sew her back up with even one grain of dirt inside her body, because that could have killed her.
Infection. Yeah, it would kill her.
That could have killed her.
Because once they close it as well, they can't see, so they.
Her intestines were cut up, so they had to be cleaned, but they also had to be stitched closed so they can heal.
Yeah.
It took hours, absolute hours. They were covered in dirt, sand, glass, debris.
No, I didn't just shove it in there. They've also, because the intestines are housed in like a little pod, a bag thing, and that would have to be repaired. You can imagine all this going on, as well as up the throat.
Any foreign body that was left inside could have ended up causing infection and death. When she finally came out of surgery, the doctor that was there actually got a cot, and he stayed with her constantly and slept by her bedside for 2 days just to make sure she was okay. Constantly supervised her. He was astounded that she was still alive. Every time this man to this day talks about the events of that night, he still cries. And both surgeons and the anesthesiologist, despite their scientific medical background, firmly believe, despite they put a lot of effort in and they went above and beyond, they really did. But despite their medical background, they believe that there was some sort of higher intervention. And the reason that she survived and is still alive is nothing short of a miracle.
Yeah, I don't think you can argue that. I think there was a lot going at play there, sort of. Yeah. More than.
So, despite the 37 wounds in this frenzied attack, the 37 wounds to her abdomen and pelvic area, and the 17 wounds to her neck, not a single vital organ was affected. No major arteries were cut. The fact that the trainee vet who found her had the wherewithal to reinsert her thyroid actually ended up saving her life, because had that stayed outside her body, that also would have killed her.
Yep.
Also, if you recall, when he initially strangled her in the car and she involuntarily emptied her bowels, that also saved her life. Because had she not emptied her bowels and that fecal matter was still inside her, that, because of all the injuries that were then made to her abdomen and her intestines, would have ended up being inside her, causing septicemia. Right. But because she involuntarily emptied herself, that also saved her life.
Yeah, well, that would have exploded as well, and caused more ruptures and damage, and
that would have caused
infection,
sepsis, basically, major infection. Yeah. The fact that one of the passengers had a mobile phone, even though the ambulance took fucking 55 minutes.
Too long. Yeah.
Fucking ridiculous. It's like good versus evil. We've got to
that too.
The goods put the right person there with a phone, a signal, and somebody that's got medical training to actually catch up. But then the ambulance driver don't give a shit, and even when he gets there nearly an hour later, he's just driving Miss Daisy on the way back. Like good versus evil, good versus evil.
All the way through. That is, yeah.
It's just, and the fact that the surgeon was trained in exactly what they needed. He was a specialist in exactly what they needed. And most doctors are trained in one specialty. The fact that he was trained in two,
it's quite unique.
It's unique in itself.
Obviously today, probably not so much, because obviously
this entire case is like a huge battle between the forces of evil and the forces of good. Battling not only to save her life, but to get these evil sons of bitches off the streets before they hurt anybody else. It's like the most evil things happened, and they're not even. I'm not even going to think of them as human. They're not. There's no humanity in these people. They're demons. If there's any earthly representation of a demon, people like this who do shit like this, are demonic.
You would argue, like, one of them claimed that he was possessed by a demon. No, perhaps he was the demon. So it's like good strives, and good actually ends up overcoming evil because she lived. Now, this picture here, if I can just... This one. This is actually Alison and the man that saved her life. And they actually ended up becoming very, very good friends. And after his encounter, that fateful night, just randomly on his holidays with his friends and coming across Alison and what he went through that night, he decided that evening that he didn't want to be a vet anymore. He wanted to be a doctor. Yeah.
And these are still friends to this day. And I'll tell you later something that just wow. I'm not going to spoil it at the moment.
Yeah, it's an intense case, and yes, it's quite a long one, but yeah.
The detective that was in charge of this case was a man called Detective Melvin Humble. And that's him. I don't know why, the only picture I found of him, he appears to be topless, but he's actually a really nice bloke. He's loved. I've seen interviews with him, I've watched videos of him, and this really affected him, and he was really passionate about this case, and he really, oh my God, kudos to him for what he did to get these bastards off the street. But I don't know why he's topless. I don't know. No,
that's weird. That's weird. A little bizarre little hand.
But that's all I could find.
I was going to say the picture I saw with me had like a blue shirt on or something. Now all of a sudden there's him. Yeah.
Right. So that's Melvin. So when Alison came round, the police were obviously keen to talk to her. They already had their suspicions on whom her attackers were, given the previous crimes that had occurred and the fact that she basically wrote their fucking names in the dirt at the crime scene, which they'd obviously by this stage, by the time she'd got out of surgery, the police were obviously informed straight away that they'd found her. By the time she got out of surgery and had come round a couple of days later, and they actually went to talk to her, they'd been there, they'd seen what she wrote on the ground, so they knew, they had an idea. So they took a book and pictures, like basically a photo lineup to show her. Well, she couldn't talk, but they wanted to show her and see if she got a reaction. And immediately she picked out those two bastards. And I don't care about my language in this episode.
I was going to say it's a bit late too.
I don't care.
Yeah. I know.
She picked them out, and then she not only pointed them out, she wrote their names down for the police. Again, she wrote their names down. And the police were satisfied with this, and they took the little book and the little bit of paper that she wrote down saying, that, yeah, that's them, they done it. And they left.
So great.
Done. Job done. They've been identified. Great. Yeah. However, the police returned the next day, and they spoke to the anesthesiologist, who gets very emotional as well. I've got a picture of him somewhere, but I don't know where it is because it's not in order. We'll maybe show you him later. And they spoke to the anesthesiologist, who was Dr. David Comran, and they told him that the prosecution service weren't happy with her just writing it down. That's not enough.
No, these are the other people, not the people frontline people. These are people sitting in an office somewhere.
Police were absolutely fine with that. Yeah. She'd pointed to them, she'd wrote it down, job done. Prosecution service, no, she needs to say it.
Why?
And the doctor's like, what? He's raging. He was like,
what? Woman said nearly had her head cut off. Nearly.
He said that he was absolutely furious at this because she'd been intubated. She had a tube down her throat because she'd had this all repaired. Her windpipe, etc., had just been all sewed back together. They tried to. He didn't want to try and take this out and damage what they'd spent hours trying to repair. He didn't want to do it, but he went and told Alison, and she got a pen and she wrote down, "Take it out." Just the strength of this. Take it out. So he took it out, although against his better judgment, he removed it, and she said, first thing she said was, "That feels wonderful." And then immediately she said, "That's Frans. That's Theuns. They did this to me." So she'd vocalized it. And this is like 3 days later, everybody. 3 days later, and she... Yeah.
Wow.
So Detective Humple goes away, and now he's satisfied that the fucking idiots at the prosecution service, who should have been happy with the fact that she pointed to them and wrote it down. That was enough. Seriously. What if they completely damaged their vocal cord and she couldn't ever speak again? What were they going to do then?
Yeah.
Anyway, he got his arrest warrant and went and arrested the two of them immediately. And when he sat down with Frans and told him what he was charging them with, like, you are under arrest for kidnapping, sexual assault, and attempted murder. He said, the look on his face, he was fucking shocked. What? And Detective Humble said, yeah, Alison survived. And in that moment, Frans said, it took him a minute to process, because she should have been dead. By all intents and purposes, he thought she was dead. She should have been dead. He then lifted his hand up and he removed a ring from his finger and put it on the table, and it was covered in blood. And he said, that's hers. And then he told them everything. He said, I'm as well telling you because she's going to tell you anyway. And he told them everything. He proceeded to confess to everything. And so did that twat, because he had no choice. When the media got hold of this story, another woman came forward who had actually narrowly escaped being abducted by the pair that evening before Alison.
The same evening?
Same evening. She saw the both of them. This was a couple of hours earlier. They tried it earlier. They approached her car, and one of them reached for the handle, and she reacted very quickly, she had a internal locking, what's it called? Automatic locking.
Was that about in 19?
She had it. Yeah. It was a new thing, but she had it. And she had managed to lock all the doors, and they'd run off. But when she saw this, she got in touch with the police, and she did she got the same photo book lineup thing. Yeah, it was them two. So they tried it before.
Well, she would have been Alison.
Yeah,
she would have
tried it before.
She would have been.
So they were determined. They were having somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So before this case in South Africa, the victim had to actually go and do a physical lineup. So the photo lineup was just so they could get the arrest warrant.
They ain't gone through enough trauma.
Yeah, that was just to get that. She had to actually physically do. You still got to do a physical lineup, but at the time prior to this actual case, they had to go into a room, open room, and the perpetrators and the victims all in the same room, and the victim had to walk up to the perpetrator and touch him on the shoulder and say, him. That's how they had to do it.
Physically touch them.
Physically touch them. They're in the same room. There's nothing separating them. And the perpetrator knows who's identifying them. So, because of the trauma that Alison had suffered, Detective Humple actually put together the first ever lineup in South Africa that was done through a one-way glass, so that they wouldn't see her. She would be able to see them, but they couldn't see her. Even though he done this, and she walked into that room, and they were still there. She was absolutely terrified, but she did it. She walked in. It was only a couple of weeks later, by the way. She's gone in there, and she said, well, they look a little bit different, but it was definitely him and him. She picked them. Gotcha, motherfuckers. So she got them. The trial date was then set, and the two previous victims, the pregnant lady and another one were called to testify to strengthen the case against them. The prosecutor in this case really struggled. She really struggled because by all rights, Alison should have been dead. And she felt like she was prosecuting a murder, basically.
Yeah.
But it was prosecuting a murder where the actual victim was testifying. And that's something that, like, and normally they can distance themselves from that.
Yeah.
But to actually have the person there with their visible injuries and, like... And there was also all the images as well, because for, like, months afterwards, this... especially the wound in her abdomen, this was left as a gaping open wound because it had to heal from the inside out.
Stop infection and stuff as well.
And it was left as a gaping wound, and they took pictures of her, like, every week she'd went in and got pictures to show the progress, and this was all shown in court. And that really affected everybody that had anything to do with it, like from the prosecution, anybody that was in the gallery, just like everybody, even the judge, which we'll get to him as well. Alison went to court every single day, even though for the first few days, before she actually herself testified, she had to sit in the waiting area because obviously you're not allowed to sit in the courtroom prior to your own testimony, so you don't get influenced, etc. But she went there every day. Now, Detective Humple, the little shirtless man I showed you earlier, was amazing. He took these two to court every day. And there's an actual picture here of him taking them to court. There he is, and there's them two. Every day for the trial, he took them to court, and every day he said to them, I'm not going to handcuff you because I want you to run. Because he wanted to fucking shoot them. So every day he took them to court with no handcuffs on because he wanted them to fucking try and run because he wanted to kill them. Because he'd been with Alison every step of the way and he'd seen what these two evil bastards had done and he wanted them to run, but they didn't. Cowards, in a way. I wish they had. And we'll get to why. Yeah. Frans, the Satanist, well, he's going through all this trial bullshit because he's trying to get his little fucking story across and whatever. He asked for an exorcist because he was possessed, according to him, by incubus and succubus. Yeah. So, although a priest was sent, the priest didn't believe him because he said that he was confusing the two and he couldn't keep his story straight and he couldn't. He was trying to pretend that he was possessed by these two, but he was getting it all arse about. He couldn't keep it straight. So, yeah, bullshit. Yeah. The trial eventually concluded, and I'm very happy to report that both of them were found guilty and sentenced to life. And the judge in this case was so affected by the trial, Alison's story and Alison's testimony, and all the evidence that they had, really, that he actually asked that a special note be put on both of their files that these two never get eligible for parole and they're never released. Life means life. And he made sure that that was on their file. And he later said in an interview that at that time, South Africa had abolished the death penalty because it was said to be unconstitutional, etc.
Yeah.
But he said that had they not done that, he would have sentenced them both to death with no hesitation. But he couldn't do that, so the best he could do was say, never let them out, because he thinks that they will always be a danger.
And they would. I think they would.
And I've got another little picture, just lovely little picture, because this brought these people together for life under the most tragic of circumstances.
And the man's got the shirt on this time.
And he's got a shirt on this time. That's Detective Humple with Alison and Theuns, who's the man that helped her and it actually ended up going on to become a doctor instead of a vet because of what he experienced. Yeah. But I'm not finished. You think it's all finished and like that? Yeah. It's all over and done with.
They got
it's
life.
Fine.
They got
life.
Prison forever.
They got life. The judge has said, never let them out. No parole.
Made it
Done.
perfectly clear.
Done. So, obviously, I've told you that the vet went on to be a surgeon instead. He became a doctor. Now, due to the extent of Alison's injuries, especially because he seemed to go for her reproductive organs and the things that made her a woman, he was angry at that. He was going for that. She was told after all this trauma, and you can imagine the injuries that she had, that she's not going to have kids. You're not going to be able to get pregnant, and even if by some miracle you do get pregnant, you're not going to be able to carry a child because of all the damage. Mm-hmm. Alison went on to have 2 little boys after this. She fell pregnant not once, but twice. And the man that saved her life, who then changed his whole career path and became a doctor, actually assisted in delivering her second baby.
That's amazing. That.
Just made me want to cry the first time. I'm not crying, but it's just like,
but I bet she felt really looked after, she could definitely certainly trust.
After the attack, Alison obviously needed a lot of help, and she moved back with her mother, and her mother was absolutely fucking amazing because she needed round-the-clock care. Yeah. She needed to relearn to do things.
Emotional damage as well.
Yeah, and her mother just put her own life on hold to look after her and done everything for her. Never complained. Amazing woman. Obviously, as I say, she had these wounds that had to heal for them, so that took a long time. And she was in a lot of pain, and at that point she thought she was going to be in this degree of pain for the rest of her life. Now, she does still suffer from pain because of this. But, I mean, at the time, she thought, this is going to be terrible. It's going to be this bad forever. And she actually did sort of sink into a bit of depression. Understandably.
A bit of depression, yeah.
She calls it a bit of a depression. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'd have fucking, the worst post-traumatic shock ever. But she said that she got a bit depressed. That's her wording. And this sort of accumulated when she had actually healed enough to be able to take her first bath. Because she hadn't been able to get in the bath because of the open wound, etc. So she had to clean herself carefully. When she took her first bath, she actually stood for the first time in front of a full-length mirror and looked at her injuries. And that was the really low point for her. There wasn't another low point that come later, but that was a low point for her. And she got really depressed, which that's the least. I'd be a mess forever. But then she remembered why she went back into her body. And she says it's because she wanted to live and she wanted to do something. And just at that same time, she got an invitation to the Rotary Club to go and talk about her experience. Now, she'd always been scared of speaking publicly. Even at school, she didn't want to get up and speak in front of the class or anything. She'd always been something that she feared. But, after going through all that shit, who cares at that stage? You know what I mean? Yeah. So she went and done it. And she actually found it really helpful talking about her experience and helping other people to overcome trauma. And she ended up travelling all over the world, and she still, to this day, nearly 30 years later, travels all over the world talking about her experience and helping other victims of violent crimes to get over their traumas by using her experience for good. And that's why she's so very open about things that happened to her, and she'll talk about the fact that she emptied her bowels. So it's all relevant. She doesn't want any stigma or shame attached to these involuntary things. It's nothing to be ashamed of. But she has helped so many people, and she is amazing, amazing woman. And where she got her strength from that day and has got the strength to carry on, I have no idea. Yeah. Meanwhile, her attackers obviously went to prison.
Forever.
Went to prison forever, everybody. Remember, the judge said, no.
Bread and water for the rest of their lives.
However, a few years ago, Alison got a letter from a woman. Now, I don't know how this woman even managed to find her, to be honest, because it shouldn't be that easy to find her. But this woman reached out to her, and she was actually reaching out to her to ask her for help. And the reason this woman was asking Alison to help her is because this woman's daughter was in a relationship with Theuns. And the way that she'd got into a relationship with Theuns is because she'd met him through Facebook.
What?
Because
But he's in prison.
exactly, he's in prison, but he's got a Facebook account and he's meeting women on Facebook. This sexual predator who hates women,
been removed from the public.
he's been removed from society because there's a danger to women, especially, is getting to use Facebook.
Social media, yeah. Well, internet in
Anyway.
general. I mean, wow.
He's on Facebook. So Alison, trying to do the right thing, she don't really want to get involved with it. But, I mean, it's pissing her off as well that he's on Facebook, to be honest. She writes a letter to the authorities, and she, in this letter, specifically asks that they keep this confidential and don't mention that she's got in touch with anybody, that this is ridiculous. Why is he on Facebook? He's got this young girl, because she was like, I mean, a lot younger than him at this point.
Yeah.
She was legal, barely, but she was a lot younger than him. Like, why the fuck has this man got Facebook? Get him the fuck up. Well, what's going on? But please keep that. I don't want to get like my name involved in this. Keep this secret. Don't tell anybody. So that's what they did. That's exactly what they did. That's what happened. And end of story. No, it's not. They gave it to. They showed him. They showed Theuns a letter. They showed him what she
said.
What she said. They gave him a copy of her letter. What the? And in response to this, because he's on Facebook and he's got the fucking internet in prison and he knows all what's going on, this is while she's making the documentary, Alison. So he, in response to her getting involved in his shit, because he's never been sorry, he gets in touch with the documentary makers of Alison. And he makes some demands of them, because he's a narcissistic wanker. And this is his demands. First of all, his first demand, which is like the most ridiculous. Well, they're all ridiculous. They're all fucking. His first demand, like he's like holding somebody ransom or something. Like, what the fuck? Who do you think you are? He wanted a letter of forgiveness from Alison that was signed. That was signed by Alison. He wanted a letter of forgiveness signed by Alison.
I'm very sorry for surviving. Or
No, forget. Like she wanted. I forgive you.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Wow.
So wow. Yeah, I want a letter of forgiveness.
Forgiveness, I see.
Yeah.
He also like an apology.
No, you didn't want an apology. You wanted a letter of forgiveness. Right. He also wanted money because she wrote a book. Remember, they said that she wrote a book.
Yeah.
He wanted money from her book and her speaking tours that was backdated all the way to 1994.
Why?
Because I'll tell you why. Because according to Theuns, he feels that he's entitled to that and half the money that she's made, if she's made any profit from it. Because if it wasn't for him trying to kill her, she wouldn't have a story.
Seriously?
Seriously. One of his demands was, I want half the money backdated all the way to when I attacked you, because if I hadn't attacked you,
tried murdering you,
if I hadn't tried to murder you, if I hadn't nearly decapitated you, if I hadn't disemboweled you, if I hadn't kidnapped you, if I hadn't sexually assaulted you,
you wouldn't be where
you wouldn't have a story.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a sick, twisted, narcissistic motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
And this was only a couple of years ago. Still not sorry. He's not sorry. All he's thinking about is himself. This is only a couple of years ago. So, I'm nearly done.
Yeah, that's
unfortunately.
A long one, but yeah.
So, despite the judge in this case putting a permanent note on the file that these two should never be released for prison, but it shouldn't even have to be a note. It should just be compulsory that if somebody does something so horrific, they should never be anywhere near anybody in the public or society ever again. There was a stupid-ass law change in South Africa in 2011, which states the following. Prisoners who were sentenced to lifelong imprisonment before 2004 and have already served 13 years and 4 months. Why it's 13 years and 4 months? I have no fucking idea, but whatever. Can now apply for parole. So, as of 2011, these pair of wankers were allowed to apply for parole because they fitted that criteria, even though there's a note on their file saying dangerous,
Do not
no
let these
remorse,
out ever.
they're going to do it again, they're crazy, they're evil,
They
don't let them
deserve
out.
the death penalty, but
From 2011, they began applying for parole. And this sunk her into depression again at this stage because it terrified her that they were going to get out on parole. She was absolutely terrified that because they're going to target her. He's already demanding that he thinks he's entitled to half of any money that she's ever made from her book or the movie that was made. But you think, oh well, that's fine. They can only apply for it. They're not going to get it. They've never apologised. They've never showed any remorse. They've never been sorry. Still crazy bastards. They're never going to get out, are they? They're never going to get out. Well, that's why I've done this episode early. Because on the 4th of July, 2023, the motherfuckers both got out.
How could they get out? See, this is the thing.
They got parole. 29 years later, Theuns is 48 years old and Frans is 55 years old and they're now free.
Yeah.
Neither have shown a single grain of remorse for what they did. Not a single one of them.
Well, they can't have done. If he's asking for money, you're supposed to go to a parole, hearing and say, "I'm very sorry. I regret what I've done. I've grown up.
I was a very bad
I'm no
boy.
longer evil. Whatever."
Never shown any remorse. They're both clearly psychopaths. Now, they might not have been diagnosed, but if you look at the scale for psychopathy, which is even starts with setting fire to shit when you're younger, that's on the psychopath fucking scale. They're both clearly psychopaths. We have got an immense hatred for women. Releasing them back into society is absolutely fucking disgusting. Absolutely unacceptable, disgusting. There was petitions going on from 2011 when this law changed. They had thousands upon thousands of people in South Africa and hundreds of thousands of people all over the world saying, don't let these people out because their story is known worldwide. Don't let them out. But they've done it. They've let them out. 48 years old, 55 years old, perfectly capable of doing something like this again. And I can't help it but think of the case that we done of Mary Vincent. Yeah. Now, I told you at the beginning, this paralleled, and it did parallel. Mary Vincent, as you remember, was abducted and sexually assaulted, and he cut her arms off, remember?
Very simple. What was his name?
Simpleton.
I don't know if it is simple.
Lawrence Simpleton. It's not, it's Singleton. Lawrence Singleton.
Simpleton.
Now, very similar. There's a lot of parallels in that case, and he'd never showed any fucking remorse either. And they let him out. Remember? They let him out. And what did he do?
He was 50 odd, weren't he? 50.
He was actually older. He was in his late 60s.
So, he's a peaceful old man now.
And he got out, and within no amount of time, really, he murdered somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to fucking happen again because these two are evil through and through, and they fucking let them out.
And this guy has proven that he's actually took the time off to find Alison's location already when he tried contacting her with this, the letter thing and everything. Mm-hmm. So that he's got the potential
of wanting a couple of years ago. He's still fucking trying to. He
feels hard done by.
Yeah, he's still trying to get into her psyche. He's still trying to victimize her because that was victimizing her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
They're out. They're fucking out. And that just, I can't even imagine what that done to Alison. 29 years of recovering and trying to get a life back and building a life for yourself and getting married and having children and helping other people and doing everything you can. And she's, since 2011, had to fight against them getting parole. And then all of a sudden, with no remorse, they've let them out. They've paroled them. What the fuck is wrong with the justice system all over the fucking world?
He specifically said they should never have been out. They need to be put to death or could. That should have held. I don't care if any stupid law has been changed. That should have been not changed. That should have remained because of how the circumstances. Not in that. I mean, even just going back to the most simplest part of it. I mean,
Well, it's not.
What is social media? Social media bans people for bloody using silly words. Like, we can't say certain words on here, yet they let them certain words have accounts. They're known words. I mean, this is irony. This is crazy world we're living in, and this is what happens. And she should be in fear for. She would be in fear for her life, and I think he would. He feels that he's hard done by. He feels like she owes him something. So is he going to take it? Is he going to finish like the other chap said in the other one? What Lisa just referenced. He said, "When I get out, I want to come and finish the job." That's what he threatened her. I will finish the job. Is this going to be any different? Are we going to see anything? Quite possibly.
Yeah. So they're out.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely beyond disgusting, and
wow,
that's just re-victimized Alison all over again. Disgusting.
I hope someone discovers them and sort them out. But
now the police detective actually sadly passed away in 2020, I believe, 2020 or 2021. So he didn't live to see them getting out. This case affected obviously no more than Alison. It affected so many people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
Actual Frans' father, who, if you remember, he was a policeman himself. After his son did what he did and was convicted, his father, 18 months later, took his own life because he couldn't live with what his son done.
Shame he didn't.
He basically murdered his own father.
Yeah. Well,
it's had a knock on, and can you when this all happened as well? You got to remember that this twat was married with a little boy. So he's got two kids out there that know that that's their dad as well. He's destroyed their lives before they've even begun. Mm-hmm. It's just...
And like you said, there's probably many victims that we don't know about because the crime was
what about this girl? Did this girl stop dating him, or has he got out and fucking take up a relationship with her and going to ruin her life? What is that about
anyway? I mean, what is that about? I mean, what she thinks she's going to have a beautiful relationship when now he's out?
I don't know, maybe she's a satanic witch, Jamie, and it'll all be fine. I don't even know anymore, I don't know. Anyway, this has been more about the amazing survival and the strength, and she's a hero. Basically, if anything epitomizes the word hero, it's that woman and what she endured
went through,
and survived,
coped with.
There's not a hell of a lot of people that could put up with all that and came out the other side.
I believe she deserves everything she gets from her books and
and she survived. She survived for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. She obviously survived for a reason, whether it was because of all the amazing work that she's done in helping other victims of crimes. Obviously wasn't to get these two off the streets for the rest of their lives, because look what happened. Maybe it was because she was destined to have these two little boys and they're going to go on to do something amazing. Who knows? But oh my God, if there's ever a definition of hero, and Alison Botha, just like Mary Vincent, is a fucking hero.
And the whole story was definitely good versus it. That's what I imagined in my head. You know, like there's like, right, we're going to do this horrible thing to this woman. Oh no, you're not, because we're going to put this in place to save her. No, you're not. I'm not going to do that. Yeah.
If I'd done this case as one of the first cases we'd done back in January, I could finish it saying, good one, yay, good one. But look what just happened. Evil's trying to fucking have a go again. Yeah. Hopefully good comes and strikes them down, and a big fucking thunderbolt and lightning for the sky comes down and just fries the bastards. One can only hope, can't they? Sorry, I'm not even sorry, because evil wankers. Anyway, that's all from us for this week.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for tuning in.
Sorry, it was a long one, but that was definitely needed.
Well, it was long because you didn't have one last week because I was busy.
Just making that up for
Just making up for it. You got 2 weeks worth, basically. Yeah. But it was a difficult one, but it deserved to be told, because she... Oh my God. I can't even imagine, just with the head. Oh my God.
There's another one that's going to stick with me all the while, because...
So we will see you next Friday, and it won't be as intense next week, I promise. Thank you very much for joining us. Take care of yourselves and each other, and if you're in South Africa, and you see one of these, maybe just push it in front of a car or something. I didn't say that, though.
Just say, yeah.
Accidentally trip into them and knock them accidentally in front of a truck.
He'd be
That'll
contacting you. Yeah.
I don't
Right.
care. I don't care. Evil. They're not even human, so it's not. Yeah. I better shut up now. Bye bye, everybody.
See you later. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye bye.